Strategy 7. Role of institutions. Black institutions such as churches, community agencies, community agencies, and fraternal organizations are needed to reestablish a broad sense of community and peoplehood. Their historical roles, and resources must be broadened and linked via a national plan analysis. There is no interlinking of black churches and social and political organizations. Thus, they continue to operate independently, taking money out of Black America, rather than bringing it in. These organizations spend millions of dollars annually on travel, meetings, hotels, entertainment, and food. Little, if any, of this wealth goes back into the black community. They have no master plans designed to alter the marginal existence of blacks. Good deal, good deal, good deal, good deal. Recommendations. Though the social political role of black churches has diminished over the past two generations, they are still a unifying force. They can play an even more important role by not only providing religious training, but assisting in the economic development and rebuilding of Black America. With a new commitment to a broad black community, black churches could initiate and mandate to call and initiate a mandate to call back the black Americans who drifted from the churches and joined white churches. Church services should be spiritually uplifting, but they must also be sources of information and motivation about the requirements for unity. With its audience of millions, the black church would not only be able to pool large amounts of money, but could also communicate the need for blacks to become better educated and more thrifty. It could also sponsor scholarships, stimulate ec- economic development through developing credit unions, food cooperatives, urban land programs, and other enterprises. Some churches have started to move in this direction and provide models that others can follow. Other social and political organizations could pursue the same goals via similar activities. Two, black church members should insist that their churches become more accountable for the billions that they annually extract from black communities through tithes and contributions. Some of these funds should be directed towards strengthening the community. They could be made available to black entrepreneurs through capital formation pools or regional economic development banks controlled by various denominations. Black ministers could assist further by preaching about the need for blacks to practice capitalism and group economics. The nursery schools and kindergartens should teach unity and economic self sufficiency. Strategy 8. Government resources. White society has always maintained full control of government and used it as a tool for acquiring and maintaining wealth. Government though assisted by government in their maldistribution of power and wealth, conservative forces oppose any use of the government to correct the imbalances helping blacks helping blacks to gain wealth. Taxes are the only established device for redistributing wealth in America. Anti-government forces understand that without tax revenues, government would not be able to assist blacks who have been abused by the powerful. Analysis 1. The conservative movement to privatize government services could have serious negative consequences for blacks because limited private sector employment opportunities force a large percentage of working blacks to earn their income from government jobs. Meanwhile, unemployed blacks depend upon government for assistance and benefits. 2. Black Africa is beginning to privatize. Free of European colonial powers and socialistic ideologies, African nations have begun to privatize or sell state owned assets as business opportunities for entrepreneurs. Black Americans should explore the opportunity to purchase some of these properties. They should also seriously explore opportunities to establish vertical businesses with Africa. Cuban and other Hispanic groups are already developing plans to gain control of privatized resources in Africa. John Naisbitt and Patricia Aberdeen in Megatrends 2000 identified industries within various African states that are in the process of privatization. Nigeria plans to sell its stake in 160 state owned banks, breweries, and insurance companies. Kenya plans to divest the state's interest in more than 400 enterprises. Mozambique has reportedly privatized more than 20 industrial plants since 1985. Tanzania plans to seek managers to take over state-run hotels and game lodges. Angola, Benin, and Congo plan to sell mining, fishing, and construction companies. Togo began privatizing services and companies in 1988. Many African countries are privatizing aspects of telecommunications and seeking new communications technologies and program sources. These business opportunities could provide blacks with a vital link to industrial development. But let the buyer beware. This will not be a giveaway, and due diligence is required. Some of these businesses may be overpriced or have poor products and obsolete equipment. Yet, even in view of potential shortcomings, these African sell-offs are worth investigating. 3. In America, local governments could establish quasi-public lending institutions funded by assets converted from confiscated properties and funds programs. In 1988, the Federal Drug Enforcement Agency reported that it had confiscated properties worth nearly $700 million. These programs could produce revenue by converting inactive funds and property into funds directed towards the good of the community from which the funds came. The funds could be made available to black entrepreneurs through low interest, long term loans. The black businesses would pay interest and taxes to city governments and create jobs. 4. Local governments could offer land grants and head rights on abandoned ghetto properties to black individuals or corporations that need land for industrial or business development. Additional tax incentives, as discussed earlier, could encourage development. Government 5. Government could formulate partnerships with black businesses and industries by purchasing a specific amount of services and goods from black businesses situated within various municipal boundaries. 6. Government could offer subsidies to black industries that hired hardcore underemployed and unemployed blacks. Funds could be redirected from funds currently used to pay government assistance to the needy in black communities and from the confiscation of funds described earlier. Strategy 9, political empowerment. What is the political system about, and why is the possession of political power important to a group? Group power is important because the distribution of economic, social rewards, and benefits within the broad society is the major role of a political system. Group power is important because the distribution of economic, social rewards, and benefits within the broad society is the major role of a political system. The group with the greatest political power will receive the greatest benefits. For nearly 400 years, the United States immigration policies have been used to contain black populations at non threatening and controllable levels. Black percentages exceeding 5 to 8% generated white backlashes. In a democratic society founded on the principle that the majority wins, the racial or ethnic group with the largest population always gets its way. National immigration policies and the integration process have restricted black immigrants from entering the country and scattered them as minorities among whites. Such practices have consigned blacks to a constant numerical minority and therefore a perpetual loser status. After emancipation, blacks struggled harder than any other group in the country to overcome barriers erected to prevent their participation in the political process. Voter registration and education drives registration and education drives were major components of the civil rights movement. The black vote became a divisive factor in all levels of elections. Blacks could proudly take credit for electing white candidates as members of state legislators, mayors, governors, and presidents. They were equally successful in delivering black candidates to public offices. However, increased political gains do not mean improved conditions for blacks. Analysis 1. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 increased black voting strength and opened the doors to unprecedented growth in the number of black elected officials. Unfortunately, the material benefits to blacks did not increase in proportion to the increase in black representation. Even in large urban areas with a strong tradition of black participation in local, state, and national government, it appears that material dividends to blacks have been either minimal or non existent. Judging by the meager rewards and benefits that blacks have received from the political system, the real question now is, should blacks continue to participate in politics as they have in the past? Two, throughout history, black office holders have been neither numerous nor especially influential. Most entered and left office without altering black Americans' conditions. More often, they lacked power and direction and had few resources from which to draw support. 3. There has been little quid pro quo for the blacks who put candidates into public office. This results primarily from the fact that white society controls nearly all aspects of government, and it will not easily let government be used to help blacks. Another drawback is black political appointees. The reality of the political process makes it easier for them to bury themselves in the business of taking care of the general public's business rather than proposing issues and programs to specifically improve the quality of life for blacks. They feel safer being good public servants rather than black employees with an agenda of their own. There's often little noticeable difference between them and their non black predecessors or counterparts. They lose sight of the reasons that blacks fought for the right to vote. Blacks do not vote solely for good government. They vote for candidates who they think will bring them proportional returns. When elected officials or their appointees fail to support black people's interests, blacks must do whatever is necessary to bring the candidate to his appointee's task. Mhm. 4. Politicians are becoming more open in expressing opposition to black issues. They sense that these issues have been successfully closeted or placed on the back burner. After a major election is over, mainstream society expresses fatigue from hearing about race issues. Blacks comfort them by discussing mainstream issues in public and political forums. The Republican Party, for instance, espouses that it is interested in increasing black membership under their Big Tent platform. In truth, their interest in black voters stop at the point where they feel that they have diluted the black bloc of votes that traditionally supported the Democratic Party. They don't want to attract hordes of blacks because they do not want to tarnish themselves with too many black Republicans. If a massive number of blacks registered as Republicans, most whites would become Democrats. If a large number of blacks registered as Democrats, most whites would become Republicans. Yeah. If blacks split their registration evenly between both the Democratic and Republican parties, whites would be very happy. If blacks developed a national plan and began acquiring self-sufficiency, wealth, and power, whites would be unable to predict the black vote and would be forced to develop other strategies. Recommendations: 1. Without wealth power, blacks as a numerical minority cannot hold public public office holders accountable. An office holder needs the majority of the votes and campaign financing. If blacks cannot offer both, they have no control over the candidate except when a narrow amount of support is needed to tip the scales. Even then, a white candidate has to be careful not to be overly identified with a group perceived as poor and powerless. Blacks must unify and form a critical mass that politicians cannot dismiss and must reward. Two, the damage inflicted by non accountable office holders will eventually compound and render blacks even more non threatening. They must financially support their candidates and demand accountability for their investments. Like wealthy Jewish or corporate groups, they must hold politicians accountable by withholding their support during subsequent elections. In their political activities, blacks should stress that the most important issue for them is not political partisanship. The race or the issue is race. There are blacks who swear by one political party or another, while whites switch political parties to make the bottom line come out right. During their enslavement, blacks did not belong to any political party. From the end of the Civil War until after the Great Depression, blacks primarily belonged to the Republican Party, but they were subordinated, lynched, and segregated. From the 1940s until today, about 85% of all registered black voters have been Democrats, and Black America still excluded, and Black America is still excluded and subordinated. This suggests that the this suggests that regardless of the degree of black political involvement, black conditions remain unchanged. Therefore, blacks ought to consider starting their own party and run their own candidates for public office. Blacks would have very little to lose since very few black public office holders win elections on the white vote. If nothing else, an independent political party would get blacks would get blacks public forums, financial support, uh, candidates committed to the black community, and white respect for having some backbone. Blacks would have very little to lose since very few black public office holders win elections on the white vote. If nothing else, an independent political party would get blacks public forums, financial support, candidates committed to the black community, and white respect for having some backbone. Black businesses must shoulder their share of the responsibility to support black political candidates. Black businesses are the first to ask for political favors and usually give the least in return. Consequently, black political candidates are weakened because they have to depend upon white contributors. It is difficult, if not impossible, for black public office holders to be outspoken and supportive of black causes if they are dependent upon white dollars. Whites only support black candidates who are non threatening to the power, wealth, and privilege of a white lifestyle. Andale pues.